It's a high-stakes gamble that few criminal defendants take, taking the stand. I even host a show on A&E called Taking the Stand about those who risk it all and do it. Today we got to see this in a case that should be making national headlines, but no one's talking about it. I believe it's because of race. It began as a road rage incident in Milwaukee on September 22nd, 2020, when a black bicyclist shot and killed a white man who was riding in a car with his wife. The bicyclist claims self-defense, even though he admits punching the man in the face moments earlier. Now, many legal experts have compared this case to the case of Kyle Rittenhouse. But unlike Rittenhouse, this case has received practically zero coverage from the national media. And you tell me, the defendant was white and the victim was black. Would this story be everywhere? The bicyclist, Theodore Edgecomb, is now on trial for the fatal shooting of 54-year-old immigration attorney Jason Clearman. Security footage from the moment of the shooting is critical, and today would be the moment broadcast networks might break in with special coverage if they were covering it. You know, because the defendant today took the stand.
I heard someone yelling out at this point, "I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you."
What was your intent at this time?
I didn't have any intent. This gentleman actually took one large step and lunged toward me like he was gonna tackle me. And I took a step back. And as I stepped back, it was the reaction from that, the firearm just went off. And with him lunging towards me, I didn't know if he was going after the firearm, if he was coming after me or what, but I know from his words and his actions, his boisterous tone, he told me, "I'm gonna kill you now." So with that, I didn't have no reason to doubt this man.
Now, there were three run-ins between the defendant and Clearman. In the first one, Clearman's wife, who was driving, swerved to avoid Edgecomb, who was on his bicycle. In the second, the defendant, Edgecomb, gets next to the Clearman's car and punches Jason Clearman so hard in the face that it knocked his glasses off. And you saw that there on the video. Then the third is the moment of the fatal shooting. The Clearmans pull over right next to Edgecomb. Jason Clearman got out of the car and approaches the defendant. He is then shot dead. Edgecomb claims Clearman had yelled a racial slur and threatened to kill him while lunging towards him with a knife in his hand. Clearman's wife, who is not white, has testified that no racial slurs were uttered. Following the shooting, 31-year-old defendant fled the scene and even the state. He would eventually be tracked down and arrested by authorities 6 months later in Kentucky. Edgecomb is charged with first-degree intentional homicide. If convicted, he faces the possibility of life behind bars. Following direct questioning, the prosecution had a chance to cross-examine the defendant. There were multiple tense exchanges, including this.
Do you think you have the right to chase after someone that has wronged you, but someone does not have the right to do that to you when you punch them?
I was getting chased down with the vehicle.
Wasn't my question, sir. Do you believe it is okay for you to chase after someone and punch them, but someone can't do the same thing to you?
I reacted to being hit.
Your reaction to what you say occurred on this car was to chase after him, not let him get away, and punch him in the face, correct?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Joining me now, attorney Jesse Weber, who's been covering this case as an anchor for the Law and Crime Network. Jesse, good to have you back. All right, so I'm a little confused here. Is his defense that this was an accident and that the gun accidentally went off? Or is his defense that this was self-defense?
Yeah, Dan, you're starting with the most memorable moment of his testimony because it's always been self-defense, always self-defense. The only problem with self-defense is that means that you have to intend to pull that trigger, intend to kill that person, but you did it to protect yourself. He gets on the stand and he says that Clearman lunged at him and the gun kind of accidentally went off. He can't really explain it. The prosecutors took note of that today and they said to the judge, "We don't think you should provide an instruction on self-defense anymore. That is not self-defense." The judge himself said, "I'm a little surprised he said that on the stand." Now, it seems what the judge is ultimately going to do is allow the self-defense instruction, but I'll tell you one thing that's very clear. The jury's going to be confused because how do you have your attorney say this was self-defense, and then the defendant comes on the stand and says this was just merely an accident, he didn't intend to kill or harm anyone? There's a little bit of confusion there. That's why the defense is really going to need to tighten this up in a closing argument to explain it to the jury.
Let me play another piece of sound of the cross-examination today. This is number 4, and this addresses this issue.
When you stepped back, did you pull the gun up?
At that moment, it did go up because I stepped back. It was reactionary.
Just a reaction. So you're stating you didn't mean to shoot him?
There was no intent there. No, I was.
Total accident, he got shot.
Yes, there was no
thank
intent
you.
there.
Thank you.
Sounds like the Alec Baldwin case.
Well, I think he's really focusing on the word intent because he's charged with first-degree intentional homicide. This is a case, Dan, where I wouldn't be surprised if he's ultimately convicted of something less, like reckless homicide or a second-degree intentional homicide charge. There's no manslaughter in Wisconsin. That's maybe what his lawyers told him to do. Take every opportunity to say you didn't intend to do this. Take every opportunity to say you were protecting yourself, because under cross-examination by the prosecution, there was a moment when he wouldn't answer their questions. He just kept saying, I had to do it to protect myself. I had to do it to protect myself. And look, in every case, it's always a risk, like you said, for a defendant to take the stand. Self-defense cases, it's absolutely vital. He had to do it here. I just think he left the jury maybe with more questions than answers, and that's problematic.
Let me play one more piece of sound. This is number 6. This is from the direct examination where he's describing the punch. He admits that he punched the victim in the face. Let's listen.
When I came up to the passenger window, I actually was, riding kind of fast, and as I gathered myself, riding pretty fast, headed to them. Came up to the passenger window and just asked him, hey, were you guys talking to me? And he said, yes, out. And I punched him.
So that's the, that's the defense. That's pretty problematic, right? That he's admitting that he punched the guy in the face.
He had no choice to. It was caught on camera. We all saw it. And if the jury believes him that Clearman used a racial slur, they're probably saying, well, I don't blame him for doing that. Now, the problem is in self-defense, you can't claim self-defense if you're the initial aggressor. He's the one who started the violence. Now, the only benefit for his case is there is a gap of time between the punch and the shooting. He did drive his bicycle away. It was the Clearmans who actually drove near him and started the second part of this. But the fact that he threw that first punch is going to be kind of tough for the defense to move past.
Yeah, and as we've said, his wife, Clearman's wife, who was in the car, who was a woman of color, said that there were no racial epithets that were uttered. So we shall see. We'll continue to follow this case, even though, I think it's a fascinating case. It's a really interesting trial. Yeah. It brings up all sorts of interesting issues. No one is covering it. And as I've said, I think if things were different with regard to the races of the defendant and the victim, all the national media would be all over this. Jesse Weber, thank you for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Dan, thank you.
Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.